Random J Productions presents the Palm Summer League. Tonight, we're here at the Daytona National Speedway for our 6th running of the summer's biggest race, the one and only Firecracker 400. On this 4th of July evening, 40-star drivers are all lined up on pit road, ready for a chance to make their racing dreams come true here in the World Center of Racing. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Josh, your commentator for tonight's hotly anticipated race. And even before tonight, Firecracker Week has proven to be very destructive right off the bat, with 10 drivers going to backups after wrecks during both opening practice and Monday's duels. However, one driver had to go to 2 backups and thus will start last here tonight, that being the 63 of Alexander Rowe. The Baker Dynamics team had to scramble to get the second backup ready for the rookie, but in the case of Rowe, he looks to at least keep this third backup car in one piece for the rest of the night's race. Another notable driver who had to go to a backup was defending Firecracker and series champion Jordan Forbes. Of course, the driver of the 61 won last year's exciting edition by just 1/1000th of a second, the closest margin of victory in channel history. Despite the backup car, Forbes is still one of the best super speedway racers in the entire field, so definitely watch out for that 61 car here tonight. Now, speaking of past PSL champions, Brendan Beal not only came into tonight's race as the points leader, but also a dual winner, earning 3 additional bonus points on top of his point lead. Being the only driver in the field to finish inside the top 10 in every single race so far this summer, momentum is very much on Beal's side going into the summer's biggest race. And finally, we come to this year's pole sitter, the 97 of Nathan Stapleton. Staple has earned a reputation as one of the more aggressive drivers in the Firecracker in recent years, as he caused 2023's massive wreck after going 4 wide. But the driver of the 97 is looking to put the past behind him, as Powerade Zero Dodge looked mad fast during Tuesday's Fast 6. And if that's anything to go by, he very much has a chance to win tonight's race. Now, before we get to see what this year's edition of the summer's biggest race has in store, let's first take a look at our starting lineup and pre-race ceremonies. So on the pole is the 97 of Nathan Stapleton, and next on the outside pole, the 01 of Daniel Voiles. Row 2, Brad Ream, who still comes into this race last in points. Next to him, the 17 of Joe T. In row 3, you'll find both our WeatherTech duel winners. Duel number 2 winner, Jason Albert in the 4, and duel number 1 and current points winner, Brendan Beal in the 37. Row 4 got 2 drivers making their first ever Firecracker starts, the 81 of Al Bunch and the 15 of Colin Cropley. Row 5, Kyler Sustran in the 19, and the 49 of Dylan Matthews. Row 6, the 28 of Riley Spurly, and Exxon Floridian, Matthew Burnett in the L3. Row 7, summer kickoff winner Bibi Ruiz, and next up the 2023 Firecracker winner Nick Sand the 20. Row 8, the 24 of Keyshawn Richardson, and next up the most recent M&M's Classic winner Floridian Matthew Hill in the 90. Row 9, the 21 of Roberto Crown, and the 10 of Campbell Marsh. Row 10, the 88 of Anthony Hernandez looking to finally win the summer's biggest race, and next on the 9 of Lipsy just hopes to actually finish this race in one piece for once. Row 11, Random J, who lost out last year in this race by just 1/1000th of a second, and next on Jaxon Bergem making his first ever Firecracker start. Row 12, also in his first Firecracker start, is the 79 of Benny Watson, and next to him the 06 of Madison Chase. Row 13, the 75 of Jack Haas, and next to him, the 48 of Ryan Wilson. Row 14, Jordan Stout in the 11, and the 62 of Patrick Miller. Row 15, the 41 of Philip Torres, and next to him, the 08 of Alex Mullen. And in row 16 starts the first wave of drivers who have to start this race in the back after going to backup cars, starting with the 96 of Owen Miles and Haley Anderson, who won our last PSL race at Minnesota. Row 17, second in points, Brian Rodriguez in the 18, and former summer kickoff winner, Jose Angel Gutierrez. Row 18, Matthew Huber in the 98, and defending series champion and Firecracker winner, Jordan Forbes in the 61. Row 19, Johnny Hernandez in the 46, and next to him, the winner from Japan, Caleb Rose in the 59. And finally, in row number 20, Alexander Vitali in the 99, and Alexander Rowe in the 63 had to go to 2 backup cars as previously mentioned. And now it's time for a pre-race ceremony, starting with our national anthem. And now it is time for the most famous words in motorsports to kick off the summer's biggest race.
Drivers, start your engines! Woo!
I can go ahead and crank it up. Fired up. Fired up. Fired up. Fired up. Fired up. Fired up.
Well, let's take a look at the track info here for tonight's Crown Jewel race. So we're going to go 42 laps on this 2.5 mile long tri-oval super speedway with 31 degrees of banking in the corners. And as for the weather here tonight in Daytona Beach, it's 75 degrees Fahrenheit with 7 mile per wind towards the southwest. And finally, as for the estimated pit window, it's anywhere between 25 to 30 laps, barring if a caution comes out beforehand. Now, perhaps one of the biggest storylines going into tonight's edition of the Firecracker is the fact that 10 drivers, a whole quarter of this now 40-car field, all went to backups either because of wrecks in practice on Wednesday night or during Monday's duels. And for more insight, let's talk to one of the drivers who had to go to a backup after duel number 2. Hey, Matthew Hubert, Josh up in the booth, got a copy?
I do.
Hey man, you're one of the many drivers in a backup car here tonight. How did that impact your team's approach when it came to planning for tonight's race?
Not entirely sure here, but considering it's Daytona, who knows what could happen tonight?
All right, man. Have a good luck out there. Have a happy 4th of July.
Yes, same here.
This sold-out crowd of 100,000+ strong is all fired up and on their feet with the pace truck heading down pit road. This is, and always will be, the summer's biggest race, the Firecracker 400s under green. And you're seeing Brad Ream on the inside wasting absolutely no time, going 3 wide down the back straightaway with affiliate teammate Staple, and thus forcing Boyles to the outside. Coming to complete the first lap here in the 2025 Firecracker 400. It's Brad Ream leading the way as he tries to move down to the inside to block out a bunch, but instead has to settle off the middle. Some other Dodgers making their way up towards the front, including 19 of Kyler Sushcherry, who of course finished last at this race last year, as well as the 28 of Riley Spurly. And already these drivers up front are going 3 by 3, wasting absolutely no time, while everybody else behind towards the middle and back of the pack remain 2 by 2. Continuing down the back shorty once again. Both Sushtry and Bunch move up to the outside as well as Brad Ream. As we go into turn number 3, would they have time to move down to the inside in front of Spurly? Looks like they will. As everyone's behind this top 2 remain 3 by 3. Here's Sushtry to the inside of Bunch. And that time by, you just saw how much ground the outside lane lost. Coming off turn number 4 this time by. And as you come to complete lap number 2, Bunch and Sushtry remain side by side for the lead, with Sushtry leading the way into 19. Looks like your turns 1 and 2. Bunch moves to the middle in front of fellow Dodge Staple, with Riley Spurly trying to peek his nose on the 19 for the lead, coming off turn number 2 now. Looks like coming down the back straightaway, both the 19 and the 28 move up the racetrack, with Sushtry moving up in front of Bunch. Spurly as well as Bibi Ruiz moving to the middle in front of Jason Albert for Sushtry. quickly moves down to the inside as well as Spurly, before Spurly forces Sushtry to the outside, as those two are now going to be side by side for the lead. Of course, this constant side-by-side racing for the lead in this large pack and this rather narrow racetrack is just one of the many reasons why this is the summer's biggest race. So expect to see more of it here tonight, as we're now 3 wide. This time, Bibi Ruiz forces both the Dodges up the track, as the 57 is help from the 24, Keyshawn Richardson. And looks like off of 2, Sushtry moves a lot of ground as he gets practically no help, as Spurly and Ruiz do make contact that time by. But I think that's just Ruiz trying to get as much side trap as he possibly can from Spurly, as we're still 3 wide for the lead going into turn number 3. But now Keyshawn Richards is going to make it 4 wide for the lead through turns 3 and 4. Sushtry moving up the track, trying to back off. Looks like he's able to do so. Big sigh of relief for pretty much everyone in this pack, and almost deja vu from what happened in 2023 and 2024 with Nathan Stapleton. So definitely a great job from everybody on their part to avoid what could have been a massive wreck early here. But regardless, we're still 3 wide for the lead through turns 1 and 2. This time, Bibi Ruiz on the outside. Richardson forced to the middle by Roberto Crown. And you can see pretty much everyone now in this pack, all 3 by 3. Even driver shows the back of the pack. All 3 wide here at Daytona. As down the back, Shirley Hernandez was thinking about moving up in front of Nathan Stapleton, but instead remains committed to the inside, as he's going to be 3 wide for the lead with Crown and Richardson. Also coming up through the ranks are Richardson's fellow Baker teammates of Random J the 53 and the 11 car Jordan Stout, where Random, and of course in the case of Random, trying to get redemption after losing out in this very race last year by just 1/1000th of a second. But for now, it's going to be Anthony Hernandez in the 88, leading lap number 5, as everyone else still behind him is 3 by 3, even towards the back of the pack. We now continue turns 1 and 2 once again. Hernandez tried to move down to the racetrack, but Random has a huge run with help from Jordan Stout, as the 2 challenger veterans are going to be side by side for the lead going into turn number 2. And continuing down the back straight, it looks like both the Baker drivers and Random and Stout are going to move to the middle, but here comes a strong run from the newly driver on the inside, Alex Bone in the 08. Into turns 3 and 4 this time by, Random moving down to the inside to block the 08. And honestly, a part of me is kind of shocked that Random decided to move back down to the inside, as there's only 4 Pontiacs in this race. 2 of them were stuck up in the upper lanes, while the other Pontiac of Alexander Rowe, of course, had to go to 2 backup cars, is still trying to make his way up towards the front. So nearly 4 wide again. That's Philip Torres in the 41, forcing the issue for a briefing move back down to the inside. And speaking of which, is on board with Philip Torres, who turns 1 and 2 as he gets forced up to the middle by the 96 Owen Miles, making his first appearance up front here tonight. And now Miles looks to the inside of Random off for turn number 2. Random now to the outside to block the 41 of Torres. And this could be a really good opportunity for Miles to take the lead away from Random, as Miles has help from the fellow Toyota, Brian Rodriguez, as well. And speaking of this inside lane, you can see pretty much every single driver coming up on this inside lane, where all drivers had to go to backups. Of course, Miles being one of them, Rodriguez, the aforementioned Rowe, defending Firecracker winner Forbes, Caleb Rose, Johnny Hernandez, are all already making the way up towards the front. Meanwhile, to turns 1 and 2, Random was thinking about moving back down to the middle to reunite with his teammate of Jordan Stout, but instead settles still with the outside lane, right in front of Philip Torres, continuing down the back straight as the inside gets a strong run. And now Miles is going to move up to the outside of the track in front of Random, Rodriguez, as well as Alexander Rowe, now up to the middle in front of Stout, going into turn number 3. As all those drivers move back down the racetrack, Rodriguez still on the inside, Miles now in the middle, as those two Toyota drivers are going to be side by side for the lead. Coming off for turn 4 once again, both drivers move up the racetrack. Roping his nose to the inside of the 18. Coming to lap number 9, car number 18 is going to lead. Now, of course, besides going to a backup, Rodriguez came to race second to point standings, only 8 points back from Brendan Beal, who so far has been relegated towards the back of the pack despite being in the Fast 6. But still, Rodriguez definitely knows it's the right around super speedways as he got a top 10 finish during his first ever PSL race at the summer kickoff back in Armory Digital in May. In addition to getting another top 10 during our last PSL race at Minnesota just a few weeks ago. And so far, this backup 18 car looks really good up in the front, especially when his drivers helping him, other drivers helping him out. And so far, Alexander Rowe has been right behind this 18 for the last lap or so. As you come to lap number 10, both drivers move down to the inside, right in front of the reigning champion of Forbes. But now coming off the driver, both drivers move back up the outside in front of Miles, and going into turn number 1, both drivers are going to move to the inside before Rogues to the inside of Rodriguez, as those two are not going to be side by side for the lead. And no, Rodriguez is not in a good position whatsoever. He has absolutely no help at all on that middle line. He loses a lot of ground here off turn number 2. But as I say that, Jordan Forbes decides to stick with the 18 of Rodriguez as he moves up the racetrack behind the 18 going into turn number 3. Here comes a huge run from Caleb Rose and Campbell Marsh in the rest of the inside lane. But through turns 3 and 4, both the PSL rookies remain side by side for the lead as you see some 3 wide towards the middle of the pack. With some more drivers who have to start this race towards the back, like Matthew Hubert, Gutierrez, 3 wide, making the layup towards the front. Meanwhile, Rodriguez and Rowe remain side by side for the lead here on lap number 11 in the turns 1 and 2. This time by Forbes, revoke to the outside of Rodriguez for a Cook tucking right back in. And as you can see, pretty much everyone into this top 10 are all 2 by 2, while everyone else behind is 3 by 3, except for Nixon and Lipsy as they're 4 wide, making contact off turn number 2. And my goodness, was this the 3rd time already here tonight? 3rd time already. We haven't hit lap number 12 yet, but we've already seen 3 instances of 4 wide early here in the Firecracker 400 as these guys are still 4 wide through turns 3 and 4. With Nathan Stapleton way up high on the racetrack, almost right up against the wall, trying to at least give both Nixon and Lipsy some room. And as you come to lap number 12, these two are still 4 wide. Lipsy never making contact with Patrick Miller that time by. Going into turns 1 and 2, can they finally sort this mess out? Ryan Wilson now, the driver on the inside, that's 4 wide with Lipsy, Nixon, and Staple. Honestly surprised they've been able to keep it all steady for over a lap at this point. Looks like off of 2 and down the back, Lipsy has a chance to tuck into the inside, right in front of his teammate Brendan Beal and sort this whole mess out. And it looks like they're finally more or less able to sort that out. So again, very, very scary and yet another close call for this field. Just 12 laps into this race. But as all of that was happening, back up front, Alexander Rowe continues to lead the way. And Rowe actually led the last several laps so far, as he and Caleb Rose remain nose to tail. Rodriguez last time by was 3rd. We'll see coming to lap number 13. Where everyone else lines up to Campbell Marshall up the 3rd. Rodriguez down the 4th. And as I said, here's Marshall looking to the inside of Caleb Rose for 2nd into turn number 1 this time by. It looks like a foul from Johnny Hernandez, and inside lane is going to get a strong run going into turn number 2 as Marshall going to challenge Rowe for the lead down the back straightaway. As the 63 is going to now move up to the middle. But now as it's headed down the back straightaway, Marsh is also going to move up to the middle, right behind the 63 of Rowe as he now moves up to the outside in front of Caleb Rose before shifting to the middle alongside Hernandez going into turn number 3 as all 3 of them will have to move back down to the inside. Here comes the 94 of Gutierrez on a fast approaching on the inside as he is 3 wide with Matthew Hubert and Owen Miles. With a fellow driver had to go to back up, Haley Anderson Jr. in the 7, also not too far behind as well. And in fact, actually all the drivers who had to start this race from the back are all up here towards the front, with the exception of Alexander Vitali, who still remains in the back of the pack as things stand. To turn number 2, we're once again 3 wide, this time for 2nd, with Gutierrez continuing a strong run on the inside, foot from Nilla 6 and Madison Chase. As Johnny looks to try to move up to the outside in front of Campbell Marsh. As we continue down the back straightaway, looks like Rowe's going to move to the outside in front of Marsh. Hernandez stays in the middle, returns 3 and 4. As those 3 drivers, Gutierrez, Hernandez, and Marsh remain 3 wide for 2nd. Coming to complete lap number 14, Alexander Rowe once again leads, was still 3 wide between those 3 drivers for second. But immediately as I say that, off the travel, Rowe's going to move back up the racetrack, this time to the outside in front of Hernandez, as he also moves up to the racetrack in front of Marsh into turns 1 and 2, this time by Gutierrez. Looking to the inside to 63 as he's slowly trying to move down to the inside of the track, but instead elects to go to the middle line as him and Gutierrez now going to be side by side for the lead off turn number 2. Down the back straight, both drivers move back up the track once again. Rowe back to the outside. Gutierrez this time in the middle alongside Madison Chase. Haley Anderson down the lead driver on the inside to turns 3 and 4. As immediately both of them move back down the track. Gutierrez once again on the inside, Rowe in the middle. Of Chase briefly looking to the inside of the 94 there. And you saw there off of 4, Marsh lost a lot of ground on that third line. In fact, all those drivers, including the 18 of Rodriguez and the 11 of Stout, lost so much ground on that outside lane. And at the current rate they're going, they're probably going to fall outside the top 15 so they're able to get down to the racetrack as soon as they possibly can. But as Rowe and Gutierrez remain side by side for the lead here on lap number 16, it's time for a very special edition of Palm Summer League Crank It Up here in the summer's biggest race. We're now approaching the halfway point here in the 2025 Firecracker 400. It looks like Patrick Miller barely beats Haley Anderson back to the line to lead this time by. It looks like last time by, Ryan Wilson was third, followed by Madison Chase and Johnny Hernandez rounding off the rest of the top 5, but of course these positions change pretty much every single second in this large pack as Patrick Miller gets a strong run off in turn number 2 from Wilson. It looks like down the back straightaway, Miller's going to move to the outside in front of Anderson, where Wilson's going to move to the middle in front of the 46 of Hernandez. There's contact between Sushtry and Ruiz, with Ruiz coming back on the track in front of Sushtry and the 01 of Foils. And for the second year in a row here in the Firecracker 400, Kyle Sushtry is involved in a wreck, going into turns 3 and 4 with heavy damage to that 19's rear end. Also involved, outside pole sitter Daniel Voiles, Jack Haas, who came this race inside the top 10 in points, and summer kickoff winner Bibi Ruiz. But yeah, in my eyes, I think the driver you got to definitely feel the most bad for that was involved in that is definitely Kyle Sushtry, as after being up front briefly towards the early portion of this race, Sushtry and the 19 team elect to play it safe. They stayed towards the back for, again, most of this race except for the early portion. But even still, despite staying towards the back, Sushtry was involved in a wreck for the second year in a row here in the summer's biggest race. As you see some drivers trying to still get in a single file formation towards the middle and back of the pack. I don't think there was a stack up. Looks like everyone's all good. No damage to anyone, no stack up, which is, of course, good to see. But going back to Sushtry, you saw his car had heavy rear end damage, but he was still, it looks like he'll still continue the rest of this race as opposed to last year, where he finished dead last and DNF during last year's Firecracker. Anyways, looks like your top 5 consists of Patrick Miller to 62, Ryan Wilson to 48, the 7 of Haley Anderson, the 15 of Colin Cropley, and finally the 9 of Lipsy, as looks like everybody is coming down pit road this time by. And yeah, you can just see just a long, large snake with everyone coming down pit road, of course, led by your leader, Patrick Miller. As again, everyone's coming down pit road, including cars that, of course, got damaged under this caution flag. Of course, as mentioned during the track info before this race began, this is usually around the time the fuel and tire window opens. And this being a caution, everyone's going to take advantage of that fact, including race leader Patrick Miller as he goes for right side tires, alongside Ryan Wilson and Madison Chase in front of him. It looks like everyone's going to do right sides only as well as fuel. Miller's off and away. As you can see, a very, very busy pit road in this mid-race caution. But here's your race off pit road. Patrick Miller is going to easily run the race off pit road as he retains the lead. It looks like there appears to be Haley Anderson barely beating Colin Cropley back to the line, followed by Johnny Hernandez and the 9 of Lipsy. But anyways, let's take a look at the instant replay. This brought out our first caution here in the Firecracker 400. So this happened right at the back of this pack. The 2 drivers to keep an eye on your screen is the 57 of Bibi Ruiz and the 19 of Kyle Sushtry. So off of 2 and continuing down the back straightaway, here's a strong run from Sushtry on the inside as Ruiz moves up to the middle. But the 2 make contact. Ruiz goes off the track when he comes back up on the track in front of Sushtry, which sent Sushtry and everyone else behind him into the wall. Well, Sushtry, of course, getting the worst of that with his heavy rear end damage. Taking us from another angle now. So Sushtry had to run to the inside. Ruiz tried to move up the track, but instead the 2 make contact, sends Ruiz off the racetrack, then comes back onto the track right in front of Sushtry. It was not clear whatsoever, not clear of Sushtry whatsoever there, with both Daniel Voiles and Jack Haas having pretty much nowhere to go. But now let's go on board with Kyle Sushtry to see his point of view. Yeah, again, Sushtry had to run on the inside. Ruiz had to move up, but instead those 2 made contact, and Ruiz was just not clear of Sushtry once he tried to come back onto the racetrack. So like I said, Sushtry, despite his rear end damage, will continue the rest of this race, albeit very, very slow, and possibly a danger for these leaders as a lapped car. Now on board with the back bumper of Bibi Ruiz. So there's the initial contact right there. And then comes back up on the racetrack, and again, it was just not clear of Sushtry whatsoever. Ruiz tried to clear himself right there, but instead resulted in carnage. And finally, on board with the 01 of Daniel Voiles. So it's happened right in front of him, makes contact with Sushtry a little bit there, but then once Ruiz came back onto the racetrack right in front of Sushtry, Voiles had absolutely nowhere to go. Anyways, we're under caution here in the 2025 running of the Firecracker 400. We'll be right back with you guys after this. Welcome back to the 2025 running of the Firecracker 400 from Daytona. We're about to go back green after the 57 of Bibi Ruiz and the 19 of Kyle Sustry made contact with one another down the back straightaway, which resulted in Ruiz coming up on Sustry, sending the 19 car around and into the wall. Also involved as well was the 75 of Jack Haas, an outside pole sitter, the 01 of Daniel Voiles. But fortunately for all those drivers, they'll continue the rest of this race, albeit probably towards the back of the pack with the amount of damage all 4 drivers suffered. But anyways, as for your current top 3, the 62 of Patrick Miller's first, followed by the 7 of Haley Anderson, and the 15 of Colin Cropley as the pace truck heads back down pit road. We're back on the green here in the Firecracker 400. A great restart for Haley Anderson on the outside that time by, but the 2 Fords on the inside of Miller and Colin Cropley could have something to say about that as you continue into turns 1 and 2. Now, as for 2 drivers coming back inside this mix, we got point leader Brendan Beal in the 37 and pole sitter Nathan Stapleton, who, despite those 2 starting up front for this race, our 2 drivers have not really mentioned much at all here tonight. Meanwhile, continuing down the back straightaway and heading into turn number 3, a fault from Cropley. Miller's going to take back the lead from Anderson as you go into turns 3 and 4 this time by. Once again, the inside gets that strong run and will prevail over the outside lane with Miller rocketing past by the 7. Off of 4, Miller's going to move up to the outside in front of Anderson, leaving Cropley as the lead driver on the inside coming to lap number 28. And with Miller still on the outside off the tri-oval, he's now going to be side by side with Cropley for the lead. With Lipsy fast approaching in the 9 car, going into turn number 1 of him briefly, looking to the inside the 15. And Haley Anderson got forced up by Johnny Hernandez to that 3rd line of the track as he's going to be 3 wide of Johnny and now Owen Miles, as that 7 car is going to lose a lot of ground. And yeah, speaking of the pack so far, ever since this last restart, most everyone, especially up towards the front, remain 2 by 2, with only some drivers, as you see, towards the back of the pack going 3 wide. So it's like everyone's electing it to play it safe, but of course things are going to get even more intense as the rest of this race continues to go on. Come to complete lap number 20 as we got a car down pit road. That's Keyshawn Richardson to 24. And we're just hearing that Keyshawn may have a tire going down, which is very shocking considering we just completed pit stops under caution. Pretty much every driver came down pit road, including Keyshawn. But there may be a tire down, which is going to be huge news for the rest of these drivers, especially up towards the points. As going into the night's race, Richardson was 3rd in the point standings, only 10 points back from Beal. So this is definitely a huge development when it comes to the point standings. And unless if a caution comes out right now, it's very likely Keyshawn Richardson is going to finish this race at least 1 lap down. So definitely a tough break for, again, the driver who came this race 3rd in the point standings. Anyways, as that was happening, the 9 car of Lipsy has taken the lead for the first time here tonight, with the 48 of Ryan Wilson now up to 2nd as he comes to lap number 30. And you can see most of this field is still 3 by 3 behind your leaders going into turns 1 and 2, with both Lipsy and Wilson moving down to the middle in front of Brendan Beal. And now we're on board with the 48 car through turn number 2, and now coming down the back straight away. You can see Wilson is closely following Lipsy's line, trying to build up a run here as you continue down the back straight away. Here comes a strong run from the 48. Is he looking to the inside of the 9 car? He is. He's certainly side by side for the lead, going into turns 3 and 4 now. And despite having absolutely no help whatsoever, Ryan Wilson's going to clear Lipsy for the lead, and now that's going to leave Lipsy with absolutely no help at all off of turn number 4. Coming to complete lap number 30, Ryan Wilson goes to lead for the first time here tonight. Lipsy goes up the track, nearly making a 4 wide briefly there. And as we come to 12 laps to go, I'd imagine this racing is only going to get even more intense with Dylan Matthews forcing Owen Miles up the racetrack. With Lipsy continuing to his ground on the outside as he's still 3 wide as you continue into turn number 2. Also coming up to the inside is the 98 of Matthew Hubert and the 53 of Random J. And there's the up ahead, the 24 of Richardson, who of course had to come down pit road. These leaders are for sure going to catch him for the next lap or so. And even though Richardson's obviously much slower compared to everyone else in this main pack, he did not get any damage. So when the leaders do catch him here very shortly, he's not going to necessarily slow down the entire field like, say, a damaged car would, as Richardson simply just lost the draft when he went down pit road. But coming to lap number 32, he saw Random was practically right next to that yellow line. I honestly thought Random was going to make a 4 wide for a brief second there, but instead Hubert went up to the middle before moving back down to the inside into turn number 1. Now looking to the inside of Wilson for the lead, with Wilson now up to the middle in front of Matthews, with Hubert maintaining the inside as they're once again going to be side by side for the lead. And you saw they're off with 2. These leaders are still trying to catch up to the 24. So, but that's probably going to happen if in the next lap or 2. So here's Rodriguez looking at the inside of Random, trying to make it 3 wide going into turn number 3 before Random quickly comes down the block. But there's still plenty of drivers behind your top 6, 3 by 3 off of turn number 4. Meanwhile, off of 4, Hubert and Wilson still with the lead, but this time by, looks like Hubert's going to have the advantage over the 48 car. This time by, coming to 10 laps to go here in the Firecracker 400. Now, I already mentioned this multiple times throughout the entire broadcast so far here tonight, but as the rest of this race continues to go on, things are only going to get more intense, and especially now in this closing portion of the Firecracker 400, I think we're already starting to see that as Matthews that time by tried to look to the outside of Wilson, try to restart a third line up front, but instead Hubert and Wilson remain side by side, with Hubert having the advantage, continuing to have the advantage down the back straightaway. And as your top 8 continues to remain 2 by 2, everyone else behind him is all 3 by 3, including Matthew Hill on the inside, Staple in the middle, and Miles on the outside. As we come to 9 laps to go, there's Keith Sorensen right there. These drivers will catch up to the 24 car here in the next few seconds, with Hubert still leading. Hubert was thinking about moving to the outside, but instead maintains the middle going into turn number 1. What are they going to do with Keith Sorensen now inside this picture? Looks like the field is going to try to split him in the middle, but instead Richardson moves up in front of Ryan Wilson. And I think that right there killed off some of the momentum the outside lane was trying to build off of 2. But as to say that down the back straightaway, both Hubert and Random move up to the outside in front of the 24. And I imagine Richardson is probably the best driver Random could see behind his rearview mirror. As Richardson's race all but over, the only thing Richardson can really do is help out his teammate to potentially win his first Firecracker 400. Now off turns 3 and 4, both Hubert and Random move back down to the inside in front of Rodriguez for all 3 of them move up to the middle in front of Richardson. Now Richardson gets forced up high by Ryan Wilson, coming to 8 laps to go this time by. And I think what these leaders are trying to do is to move Richardson out of the way so he won't help out Random for the win. And speaking of Random, here's Brian Rodriguez looking at the inside of the 53 into turn number 1. This is definitely bad news if you're Random, as not only you're stuck on the outside of no help whatsoever, but none of your other teammates are nowhere to be found. But now continuing down the back, both Hubert and Rodriguez remain side by side, footed with Albert. Now making a 3 wide for the win to turn number 3. So there's contact between Brendan Beal, Benny Watson, and Patrick Mills. They both go on the wall into turn number 3. Also collected, Lipsy the 9 and Madison chasing the 06 as the caution is back out late here at Daytona. And once again, Lady Luck deals a bad hand to Lipsy, as it was looking like he was finally going to finish the Firecracker in one piece, but for the 6th edition in a row, Lipsy's going to get involved in at least one accident here in the summer's biggest race. But it looks like that time by the 4, Jason Albert was your leader, followed by Brian Rodriguez, Matthew Hill, Al Bunch, while Matthew Hubert fell all the way back down to 5th. As for some of the other drivers also in the mix inside this top 10, the 41 of Phil Torres is 6th, followed by the 03 of Matthew Burnett. Random Jane at 53 is in 8th. Dylan Matthews making a way up to the field nicely. Currently in 9th, where Ryan Wilson rounds off the rest of the top 10 into 48. As you look, I got to stack up towards the back of the pack. Multiple cars with damage, with the worst of them all being Lipsy in the 9 car. And again, just as I said, Lipsy just seemingly has bad luck every single year here at Daytona, and his night went from not only bad to now worse. Anyways, let's take a look at the instant replays of both what caused our second caution of the night, as well as our stack up under caution here in the back straightaway. I keep mentioning over and over again just how intense these super speeder races get as they continue to go on, especially as you come down towards the finish. And I think what we're about to see is a prime example of that. Watch 62 of Patrick Miller on the center of your screen, alongside the 79 of Benny Watson and 37 of Brendan Beal. So continuing down the back, pretty much everyone here at this point minding their own businesses. But then looks like Watson got into Riley Spurly, sending him up to Keisha Arnson and Brendan Beal, with Patrick Miller, of course, being right behind the 37. And got the absolute worst of it. Heavy front end damage to the 62 with Lipsy and Madison Chase both getting collected very late into that commotion as well. Now let's take a look at this from up above. So Watson is all over Spurly down the back straightaway, but gets into that right rear, sends Spurly into the 24 and the 37. And again, with Patrick Miller being right behind Beal, he had pretty much nowhere to go. Owen Miles gets damaged as well. And despite Lipsy and Chase both being on the brakes, still isn't enough to avoid the spinning 62 car in turn number 3. But now it's gone board of Benny Watson. So he's all over the back bumper of Spurly, gets a huge run here, but yeah, again, just a bad push on that right rear, right in that right rear of Spurly. And even though Spurly is able to thankfully save it, the other drivers behind him weren't so fortunate. On board of Patrick Miller now. Yeah, Miller practically got nowhere to go as he was right next to both Spurly and Watson, in addition to being right behind Beal. And again, you can see the heavy front end damage to that 62 car. And finally, on board of Owen Miles. And just like with Miller, he was just at the wrong place at the wrong time, Miles was right behind Staple that entire time, and once Staple moved down to the inside, Miles was left to defend for his own. Now let's take a look at what happened to cause that stack up after the caution. Looks like Colin Cropley slowed down with Jordan Flores tapping into the back of him, and pretty much everyone else behind followed as a result. Daniel Voyles, Jordan Stout, the 08 of Alex Moan and Lipsy getting the worst of it. Heavy front end damage to his 9 car, and now I was on board for Lipsy to see his point of view. Yeah, obviously Lipsy couldn't see Cropley came to a stop, and once everyone else came to a stop, it was just all of a sudden, Lipsy had no time to react whatsoever. But anyways, we remained under caution for the second time here tonight in the Firecracker 400. We'll be right back with you guys for potentially our final restart of the night. Welcome back to the 2025 running of the Firecracker 400. We're about to go back green after the 79 of Benny Watson gave a bad push to Riley Spurly into 28, resulted in Spurly getting into Brendan Beal, Owen Miles, and worst of all, Patrick Miller, who's currently the only car out of this race. In addition as well, under the caution flag, the 15 of Colin Cropley caused a stack up with more drivers getting damaged, including Lipsy, who is not only involved in that stack up of Cropley, but also got damaged from the aforementioned wreck that brought up the caution to begin with. Anyways, as for your top 3, dual number 2 winner Jason Albert is first, followed by second in points Brian Rodriguez. This could be potentially a huge points night for that team, especially with Brendan Beal, the point leader going into the night's race, getting damage from that aforementioned caution. And finally, in third is the Florida native Matthew Hill. How special would it be for not only that Navy car to win on this 4th of July race, but for Matthew Hill to win right in front of his hometown crowd. And of course, with just how late this restart is, we're going to restart this race with just 3 laps to go. If any other caution comes up from this point on, we'll have to finish this race under green-white checkered conditions. But for now, the sold-out crowd is all on their feet as you come back to the green flag here in Daytona. Only 3 laps to go here in the Firecracker 400. And just like our last restart, the outside gets a strong run. This time, Brian Rodriguez with a great restart. But going into turn number 1, he has absolutely no help whatsoever, with Jason Albert still remaining on the inside. And you saw Rodriguez tried to come down, but Albert was there as he's going to be side by side for the lead into turn number 2. And looks like off of 2, the inside of led by Albert is going to get a strong run. A fall from Matthew Hill, and also on board with Matthew Hubert. Here's a strong run from the 98 car down the back straight. He gives Matthew Hill a shot as to go into turn number 3. And here's Matthew Hill now looking to the inside of Albert as he gets forced from the outside as we're once again side by side for the lead through turns 3 and 4. Matthew Hill off of 4 of the advantage over Albert as this time by we come to 2 laps to go here in the Firecracker 400. Now the question is Matthew Hubert going to remain committed with Matthew Hill, or will we try going for one of himself as we got much of movement towards the back of the pack, with the Campo March driving down to the inside. And historically speaking, this is the biggest pack we've seen to the finish here in the Firecrackers history, as at this point during the past Firecrackers, over half the field is in the garage area, but this is still anyone's race to win, and so far seemingly everyone's playing it safe as this pack continues to remain 2 by 2. Down the back into the 3, Albert and Hill remain side by side for the lead. In addition to the aforementioned Matthew Hubert, Matthew Burnett and Dylan Matthews are also in this inside line. So a bunch of Matthews make up this inside line, but Albert and Hill remain side by side for the lead. Once again, Hill have the advantage off of turn number 4. Coming back to the trial this time by, we see the white flag. Only one lap to go here at the Firecracker 400. Albert and Hill still side by side for the lead. You see once again Hubert laying back going into turn number 1. Could he possibly make it 3 wide for the lead on this final lap? But once again, Albert and Hill remain side by side for the lead. Hill is still with the advantage as well from Hubert. Off for turn number 2 and down the back for the final time. Down the back straight for the final time. Everyone's still 2 by 2 as there's contact between Nixon and Hernandez as Tim and Crowley go spinning in the grass. And even though the caution's out, they still the race back to life. Hard hits of Hernandez is down in the 3. But here you go, off for turn number 4. Matthew Hill again with the advantage over Albert. As for the second year in a row, going to be side by side here at Daytona. Coming to the line, I think Matthew Hill, yes it is. Matthew Hill wins the Firecracker 400. And oh my goodness, in his 4th attempt here in the summer's biggest race, is going to be the Floridian who wins in front of his hometown crowd. I'd imagine that's a special, special feeling for Matthew Hill and that team, and in that Navy paint scheme, winning here on this 4th of July night. As I got cars spinning here in the back straightaway, the Throat Torres staple in the grass. Ryan Wilson around, Campbell Marsh's car is destroyed, Sam Vitale and others all go around after the checkered flag. Oh my goodness, even though there wasn't really a big one during the race, I guess everyone saved the big wreck after the checkered flag at least. But of course, that's also in addition to the hard hits both Anthony Hernandez and Jordan Stout took in that wreck coming to the checkered flag. But of course, you got replays of both crashes as well as that final restart that ultimately helped Matthew Hill win the summer's biggest race. So let's first take a look at that final restart of the race. See Brian Rodriguez on the outside of a huge jump, similar to the jump Haley Anderson had in the restart before this. But that ended up being short-lived as here's a huge run from Jason Albert in the turn number 1 and fell from Matthew Hill. And you saw Rodriguez tried to move down in front of Albert and was way too late on doing so. And was just forced up to the outside and was just stuck on the outside from that point on. And now down the back straightaway, he has a huge run from Matthew Hill. He gets into the back of the 4 car a little bit. And there was Matthew Hubert giving a huge shove to Matthew Hill, giving a huge wave of momentum for the 90. Albert moves to the outside in front of Rodriguez. And Matthew Hill felt for Matthew Hubert to Matthew, I guess the 4 Matthew tag team of Matthew Hill, Hubert, Matthew Burdett, and Dylan Matthews led the way for the rest of the race. And once Matthew Hill got to the front of the race, got up front in the pack, there was no looking back for that 90 car. And now fast forward to the checkered flag to see the margin of victory. 1/100th of a second, not as close as last year's 1/1000th of a second, but it's still good enough to be the second closest in Firecracker history. And it's also the second time this year Matthew Hill has won the Super Speedway race by mere feet, as he of course beat Keyshawn Richardson to win the M&M's Classic earlier this year by 2/100ths of a second. But now let's take a look at the replay to see what caused that wreck on the white flag. It looks like Alexander Rowe got into the back of Nixon, who as a result came down on both Anthony Hernandez and Colin Cropley. Sent both those drivers down the grass and back up the track. Oh my goodness. Right in front of Jordan Stout and Madison Chase. A hard lick for both Anthony Hernandez and Colin Cropley. We're going to look at the slow motion here to see how hard this hit was. Oh my god. Hard hits for both drivers. Madison Chase also have nowhere to go. Baby Roots barely squeaking by. Brendan Beal, the point leader, who was already involved in a wreck earlier tonight, gets involved in another one. Hard hits for both him and Colin Cropley. And watch again, Jordan Stout still spinning in turn number 3 as he gets hit again. And I think as he gets hit again, I think by Daniel Voiles coming up here shortly. Oh yeah, Voiles is definitely going to hit him here this time by. Oh my goodness. Wow. Hard hits, even on the final lap of this race. Definitely hope everyone involved in this is alright, for sure. Now let's go on board with Anthony Hernandez just to see how hard this impact was when he hit Jordan Stout. Oh my goodness gracious. I mean, that's probably the worst feeling in the world you can have as a driver. There's quite literally nothing Anthony could have done except for hold on and hope for the best. And finally, as for the wreck after the checkered flag, looks like Matthew Hubert caused a bit of a stack up. Al Bunch got into him in the 81, sent both the drivers into the wall. and then everybody else behind them just piled in. Torres going for a spin. Campbell Marsh probably getting the worst of it, alongside Alex Vitale, and just pretty much everyone else piling in here. And now it's going on board with Ryan Wilson to see his point of view on all of this. So similar to our second wreck during our second caution, once one or two drivers stacked up, pretty much everybody else piled in, this time being obviously much worse. It's pretty much everyone piles in right behind. Wow, probably the worst wreck I've seen after a race in quite some time. But speaking of after race, this is going to be an after party for Matthew Hill. And Matthew Hill Racing has their winners for the 2025 edition of the Firecracker 400. Obviously, of course, a huge congratulations to Matthew Hill and his entire race team, as this will mark Matthew Hill's third career win on the channel and his first Palm Summer League win. But anyways, let's take a look at the finishing results and point standings after tonight's race. So here we go. Of course, Matthew Hill wins the 2025 running of the Firecracker 400. Like I said, huge deal for that team. Hometown win, a win for the Navy on the 4th of July. Definitely a big win for Matthew Hill. And it's also going to really help him out big time in the point standings, especially with some of these point leaders like Brendan Beal and Keyshawn Richardson having issues. Is definitely going to help out big time for Matthew Hill in the point standings, as you'll see later on in the post-race. Meanwhile, Jason Albert in the 4 finishes second by 1/100th of a second. Wouldn't be the first time Albert lost a Daytona race coming to the line, but still a great result for that 4 team after winning duel number 2. A great Firecracker week overall for Jason Albert in the 4 team, as they normally won their duel. Of course, participating in the Fast 6, started up front, and also got a great points day in December and great points night in December's biggest race. Definitely going to help out that team in the standings big time going into our final 3 races of the Palm Summer League. Meanwhile, in third is Matthew Huber in his first Firecracker attempt. He's, of course, one of 10 drivers who went to a backup car after his dual race, but still managed to make the most out of it. Looked like I'm kind of surprised, honestly, Matthew Hubert did not make a move on Matthew Hill coming to the line, as Hubert had plenty of momentum on the inside, but I guess just, I don't know, didn't have enough time to make his move, or just chose to stand behind Matthew Hill and push him to the win. Meanwhile, another car who went to a backup after the dual race, Brian Rodriguez, will finish 4th. Definitely going to be a big deal for that team points-wise, as he, of course, came this race behind Brendan Beal in points, and, of course, with Brendan Beal being involved in 2 wrecks, this could potentially put Brian Rodriguez up to the points lead, but we'll have to wait and see after in the point graphic coming up here shortly. Meanwhile, to round off the rest of the top 5 is another Matthew Burnett in yellow 3. Solid result for that team as well. Al Bunch in his first Firecracker starter finished 6th. Dylan Matthews finishes 7th. So again, all of the Matthews inside this top 10, and all in an inside lane, coming to the flag to finish this race, which is kind of fitting. Roberto Torres will finish 8th. Nathan Stapleton, the pole sitter, will finish 9th. And Random J in the 53 will round off the rest of the top 10. As to 11th through 20th, Ryan Wilson was a driver who was really strong and clean air towards the closing portions of this race, but I feel like that caution that, of course, took out Patrick Miller, Lipsy, and some other drivers, if that never came out, I had a feeling Wilson could have potentially stayed up in the mix and could have potentially contended for the win here at Daytona. Riley Spurly, of course, was the catalyst of that second caution after his contact with Benny Watson, so finished inside the top 15 and 12th. Campbell Marsh 13th, Roberto Crown 14th, while Caleb Rose rounds off the rest of the top 15. And to round off the rest of the top 20 is last year's Firecracker winner, Jordan Forbes, who was an absolute non-factor in this year's edition. I mean, he didn't even lead a single lap all throughout the night. And even though he was up front at one point towards the midway point of this race, he, of course, got damaged during that stack-up of Colin Kropp, who were under caution. And after getting that damage, the 61 car, which was relegated towards the back of the pack for much of the rest of for the closing portion of this race. So definitely a disappointing result for an Almeida driver looking to defend a Firecracker win, but also a team with championship aspirations. And so, of course, Forbes is another one of those drivers who had to go to a backup. You just might have to wonder, what if Forbes did not have to go to a backup and stuck out with his primary car, if the result could have been different or not. And speaking of disappointing results for former Firecracker winners, Nick Sant will finish 21st, as he also failed to lead a lap here tonight. Alexander Rowe, who actually had the most laps here tonight, will finish 22nd. Of course, he and Nick Sant got together on that final lap crash, And Rowe was out front for a decent portion of this race. Again, he led the most laps here tonight. But unfortunately, after that first caution, Rowe was relegated towards the middle of the pack and was just never able to find his way back up to the front. Also see a fair amount of big names here like Joe T, Johnny Hernandez, Owen Miles, Gutierrez, while Bibi Ruiz in 29th and Jaxon in 30th both got damaged during that first caution with Kyle Sustry and Daniel Voiles, but wasn't nearly as severe as both those drivers, and so at least finished within 5 seconds of the main group. And finally, as for everybody else, 31st on down, starting with Lipsy, it was really looking like he was finally going to finish a Firecracker without getting caught up in some sort of wreck, but unfortunately, again, Lady Luck was just not on Lipsy's favor, as you know, only got involved in our second caution tonight, but also got involved with that said stack up under caution that caused even more damage to his race car. Daniel Voiles, of course, started on the outside pole, finished back here as he was also caught up in that first caution. While everybody else, 33rd on down, all got serious damage. And as for the drivers who were involved, in the case of the drivers who were involved in that final lap caution, they'll be scored 1 lap down. Anthony Hernandez, of course, took a massive hit from Jordan Stout. Definitely hope everyone, again, is okay from that final lap caution, because that was a hard impact. Cropoli as well took a massive hit. Mash and Chase was up front, but she was involved in both our wrecks late. Of course, Jordan Stout was the driver who pretty much T-boned Anthony Hernandez as he came back onto the racetrack. Of course, Brendan Beal, the point leader going into the night, definitely not the night he wanted after winning his dual race. And behind him is Keisha Anderson. You know, he did get damage from the last 2 wrecks of the night. The main reason why he's a lap down is, of course, that tire he had going down after our first restart. The 24 car had to come down pit road and ended any of his chances to win the summer's biggest race. Meanwhile, misfortune once again strikes Kyle Sustry here at Daytona, but at least this time around he was able to finish the race, while the only driver who was not able to finish this race is the 62 of Patrick Miller. As for the second year in a row here in the Firecracker, the winning organization also had a car finish last. In the case of last year, it was Beacon Mopar. Jordan Forbes won the race, while Kyle Sustry finished last. And in the case of this year, it was Matthew Hill and Matthew Hill Racing winning the race, while his teammate Patrick Miller ended up finishing last. And now for the point standings after race number 4, only 3 races remain in the final Palm Summer League season. And as you can see, we have a new point leader, this time being rookie Brian Rodriguez with 143 points as he leads Firecracker winner Matthew Hill by 6 points. But a huge jump from Matthew Hill after winning tonight's race. As going into the night, he was 12th in the points, but after the win, he moved up 10 spots in points and is now within striking distance of your new point leader. We know as for the other drivers behind, Random J moves up to 3rd in points, behind by 15. Roberto Crown Jr. moves up to 4th in the points, behind by 18. Meanwhile, in 5th, you actually see a tie between Benny Watson and Jordan Forbes, with Watson having the advantage over the defending series champion due to Watson's 2 top 5s as opposed to Forbes' 0. Meanwhile, just behind both those two, we have another tie, this time a 3-way tie for 7th in points, with Matt Burnett having the advantage over both Joe T and Brendan Beal. As Burnett had better stats when it came to top 5s and top 10s. Burnett had a top 5 and 2 top 10s versus Joe T's 1 top 5 and 1 top 10, where Brendan Beal has 0 top 5s but 3 top 10s. And I will say the only reason why Brendan Beal is even in this tie, this 3-way tie to begin with, is because of those dual points. If Beal did not win his duel and get those 3 bonus points, he would actually have fallen below the top 10 in points after his poor performance here tonight. And finally, to round off the rest of the top 10 is the 20 car of Nick Sand, who's behind by 29. So next up, race number 5, we head to the Green Mountain State to the Vermont International Speedway for this year's running of the Reese's Hot Ring Rumble, which will be on this channel July 20th at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, barring any delays. But as always, y'all, thank you guys for watching this race. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and have a happy and safe 4th of July.